All right, we're going to go ahead and get started. Thanks everyone for joining us. My name is John Gershman. I teach at the Wagner School at NYU, and thanks for joining the inaugural session of the Conflict, Security, and Development series for the spring of 2024. Just a quick thank you to Hannah Atchison for organizing and coordinating the series, and for the co-sponsorship of the series, which includes the Office of International Programs at the Robert F. Wagner Graduate School of Public Service, the Masters of International Relations program at the Graduate School of Arts and Sciences, the International Education program at the Steinhardt School, the Center for Global Affairs at the School of Professional Studies, the Center for Human Rights and Global Justice at the Law School, and the Bernstein Institute for Human Rights at the Law School. We're very excited today to have Eric Gutierrez, who is going to speak on perfect storms, unusual actors, and interdependencies. That's the title of his talk, based on his recent book, Rethinking Illicit Economies and Opium and Cocaine, Policy Responses to Drug Crops in the Global South. As is customary, Eric's going to chat for a little bit, and then people should feel free to post questions, preferably in the Q&A. And then I will throw the questions to Eric. So without further ado, Eric.
Okay, thank you, John and Hannah, for this opportunity to have this discussion and also discuss what took about 10 years to finish the research behind this book. And for this discussion, I have tried to compress it into three stories, to start with three stories that will tell about perfect storms, unusual actors, and interdependencies. And after the stories, then go into some of the research problems and methodologies that I use for studying this various phenomena, and then some kind of policy, some an approach for policy reform and development. So yeah, let's without further ado, then yeah. So the first story that I wanted to put out is I called it the goat, no? Because this story happened in Myanmar when a poor farmer and his family they were displaced by conflict in the highlands of northeast Myanmar, which is mostly mountainous. And then they lost their goat to a thief. Now, the goat was very important to them because it was their source of milk. So the daily struggles of surviving in that kind of area where there were no paved roads, no public services. Yeah. So the farmer then decided to trek to a distant police station, which was, as usual in those places, understaffed and under-resourced, to get help. But the farmer was simply ignored. Now, on his way back, he chanced upon the local trafficker, the one who buys opium from the farmers. And this trafficker has already prepaid him, the farmer, for 25 kilos of opium gum. So when told about the problem, the trafficker said, "Let's see what I can do." So 3 days later, the goat was returned with an apology from the thief. So what the story shows is that the trafficker was not just, a criminal, a trafficker, buying opium and reselling it, bringing it into the various markets. But for that farmer, he was also a source of protection. And at the same time, he was also the trafficker was also a source of credit, of loans, because the prepayment that he made for the 25 kilos of opium was very important for struggling families to be able to tide over and continue the cycle of the farm cycles that they're involved in. So the story number two is about the well, and so these are similar themes to the first one. So this happened, this happened in actually in the Sahara, but the photo I use, I couldn't find the photo I use is not from the Sahara. So an NGO supporting community projects in struggling desert villages, they suddenly had to pull out their staff from the field and suspend operations because there was a military coup in the capital. and the bandits and unknown armed groups, probably terrorists, started roaming around the villages. So the project to repair in one village, a project to repair and improve the water source had to be abruptly suspended. And of course, we all know the value of water for people. It's just it's a source of drinking water at the same time for their livestock, yeah, and for their vegetable gardens. So while in despair, one day, a known smuggler, he is known to the people in the village. So he has an armed caravan, and they always go through the desert, smuggling lots of things from arms, cigarettes, cocaine, whatever. Huh? So he stopped by to replenish supplies and buy fuel and also refill their water containers. Now, when he found that the well needed urgent repairs, he offered the village elders that he can bring back bags of cement, iron bars, a hand pump, and spare parts of the hand pump on his way back. So the question that emerged was, should the smuggler, a criminal, be also considered a development actor like the NGO? Yeah. So that in a nutshell is, it's a long, there's bits and pieces of that story, but yeah, the basically you know the, the smugglers and the criminals obviously are performing other roles, and the relationships that they develop, relationships of conflict and accommodation, because they can also be predators to the local community. But in this particular instance, in this story, he was something that delivered some benefits to the community. Now, the last story is what the is about what the heroin industry can teach us about solar panels. And this is um, a short video from Afghanistan about the challenges of producing opium and how opium growers in Afghanistan were actually using solar panels. So let's, yeah, John.
15 years ago, this corner of southwest Afghanistan was nothing but sand. Following the fall of the Taliban regime, people began to come to this and other deserts of south and southwest Afghanistan in growing numbers. Using percussion drills, farmers sank wells into the ground up to 100 meters deep. Then, with affordable diesel generators and pumps imported from Pakistan and China, these farmers transformed what was once rocky desert soil into productive agricultural land. By 2013, there was an extra 300,000 hectares of agricultural land in the southwest of Afghanistan alone, providing homes and land to as many as 1.2 million people. However, by 2013, at its peak, there were also signs of growing environmental stresses in these former desert areas. Growing levels of salination, the monocropping of poppy, and poor plant husbandry had led to consecutive years of low opium yields failure, and some farmers, particularly the land poor, unable to meet their production costs and feed their families. Some farmers left the desert and went looking for new land where they thought they might be able to make ends meet. Many persevered in the desert, conscious of the shortage of land in the well-irrigated areas of southwest Afghanistan, and hoped that their crop would eventually recover. In response to this, some farmers installed solar-powered tube wells, thereby eliminating the 450 litres of diesel they had needed to irrigate each acre of land and dramatically reduce their input costs. What started as a few isolated farmers became commonplace, and by 2016, over 13,000 solar-powered tube wells could be seen across southwest Afghanistan. This shift to solar-powered technology in the deserts of Afghanistan has supported crop diversification and a shift to wheat, conscious of the repeated failure of their opium crop. The environmental implications of this dramatic uptake of solar-powered technology are hard to predict. In the past, farmers estimated the groundwater had dropped up to a metre each year since moving into the desert. Now that the area is awash with solar power technology and water is considered free, there is little incentive to manage it efficiently. The implications of draining this groundwater will undoubtedly be felt further afield. Surely it is only a matter of time before this area once again returns to desert. But what are the implications of the loss of livelihood for 1.2 million people who currently live in these former desert areas? And where are they to go when the water eventually runs out?
Okay. Thanks. So are we back to the screen?
We don't see your slides.
Yeah. There. Can you see it now?
Nope.
Yeah, share. Right.
Right.
Yeah, can you see it now?
Yep, all good.
Yeah, okay. So so very short video, and shows again, uh, they were able to invest in solar panels and deep well drilling of water because of with the help of their opium crop. And they don't monocrop opium. In the photos, what's shown are different crops growing, but opium is usually a winter crop. They plant it around December and they harvest it around March. So, and then the rest of the year they go for food crops. So it's part of their survival strategy to have different types of crops. And opium was, is, the main source of, it's the main cash crop. And this is the reason why, in certain years, up to 85% of the world's opium comes from Afghanistan. So with those three stories, it shows different kinds of the storms, the different problems faced by communities, in many different areas. So you have conflict, you have criminality, you have corruption, the police not working, institutions of justice not working, and then you also have issues of environmental degradation and also climate change. So the question that I had when I started was, you know, how do you investigate phenomena for which information is fragmented and even, hidden oftentimes and often inconsistent? And what I did was to use a comparative methodology that examined similarities and differences across cases. So I looked at cases and then looked at what's similar among them, and then what makes them different to each other. And so what I did was cases of community contexts of survival and resilience. So I dug deep into what's going on in in the villages. So in Helmand in Afghanistan, in Shan State in Myanmar, and then in the Chapare in Bolivia, yeah. And these stories of because there are quantitative measurements ongoing about production volumes, about how many illegal opium or coca is how many is seized by authorities, and there's also tracking and monitoring of prices, but quantitative measurements don't tell the whole story, and it's important to know some of the social context in which those those measurements are based on. So I compared community contexts in Afghanistan, Myanmar, Colombia, and Bolivia. And then the next set of comparisons I made, which is in chapter 5, are the careers and life stories of criminal entrepreneurs. So this was actually where I started, and what the core of the book's contribution. So I looked at I looked to charge sheets, different biographies being made. There was the drug lord from Bolivia that I looked at. His wife wrote a biography about him, and so by using these sources, I pulled together uh, stories of how they evolved, and what comes out from those stories. Because usually when you talk about mafia studies, about drug lords and criminals, it often focuses, those studies often focus on violence and illegality. But in this time, what I tried to highlight in the stories are the role, their role in agrarian transformation. When do they become providers of employment to collapsing local economies? When do they provide some kind of protection, as what happened with the farmer and the goat? Yeah. So it's so that's that's one set, and then set of comparisons, and then the final set of comparisons are about changes in crop prices over time. So basically, in the four countries, what I did was to identify a turning, a historical turning point in those countries. And also, for example, in Myanmar, the 2001, in Afghanistan, the 2001 opium ban imposed by the Taliban, which really, the up to 99% of opium, the production went down. So it was very successful. So I just looked at the prices before and after and tried to look at, how do prices, what affected price changes uh, before and after that historical turning point. And then in Myanmar, it's about the ceasefires that happened in 1989 to 1993. So look at prices before and after the ceasefires. The military of Myanmar from 1989 signed up to 22, 23 ceasefire agreements with the different insurgent groups, ethnic armies all over, in different areas. And from 1989 to 1997, that was a time when Myanmar was the biggest opium producer in the world, before it was overtaken by Afghanistan. So the question I had there was, the theory of the price theory about the invisible hand or the visible hand, and yeah, so it's all discussed there. And just a few intended and unintended, some quotes that I use, or there are three authors that actually that I drew from to develop the framework of analysis for this book. So the first one is Eric Hobsbawm. He was the one who he wrote the book Bandits, and then he talked about the ancient politics of Robin Hood, which means that Robin Hood was a criminal hunted by the state, but was a popular folk hero for those who have for the poor and the marginalized in that area. And then Anton Bloch in 1974. This is a classic book, The Mafia of a Sicilian Village, and he's an anthropologist, and basically what he said was that it must not be assumed that mafiosi have their own independent structure, because they are essentially embedded in local communities, the economy, and state institutions, and are therefore engaged or locked in interdependent relationships where there's friend of foe with other socio-economic and socio-political actors. And then the last thing that and I also read Norbert Elias, the translation into English of his book, and there is this one quote that I picked up, which is, at any given point of economic development, people are bound to and dependent on each other in quite specific ways, producing particular forms of social integrations and tensions. So the three stories that I presented, are elaborations of that dependencies on each other, and how it produces those particular forms of social integration and tensions. My last slide now is this is more an an approach for policy reform and development. So basically, what I'm proposing in the book was that the problem be sort of divided into steps in the commodity chain. So it starts from cultivation, and then with 6 steps down to consumption. And with coca or opium cultivation, the conventional statement of the problem is often that because typically land poor and subsistence farmers grow these illicit crops to feed into criminal markets. So what I'm suggesting, and what many other scholars have suggested, is that the real problem is not the growing of opium or coca, but marginalization and exclusion, that they have no choice but to grow these crops. Because opium, it has longer shelf life. It is low weight, low volume. You can, put 10 kilos in your backpack and you can bring it to the market. So it's easy. And then, it provide, when you plant opium or coca, the farmers can get credit, they can get protection, market access. So what needs to be addressed is the key origins of the harms, like household indebtedness. So I won't go through it now, but that's the basic idea for this. That in each step of the chain of the commodity chain, there is a conventional statement of the problem, and maybe one way of being able to uh, respond to what's going on is to try to think of more an alternative approach and using this balance of demand and harms. And yeah, and then yeah, down there is the last point there with consumption, which is of course a big issue, especially in here in Western Europe and North America. So manage drug use disorder as a public health rather than a criminal problem.